Hello everyone, and welcome back to the layout. For this week's video, we're going to go ahead and do volume 3 here in our series on the freight cars that are on the layout. This week we're going to be doing the gondola cars that are in general freight service with, scrap loads and steel loads, all that fun stuff, no coiled steel. And then we're also going to do a brief look at tank cars because there's only a few of them here, so I'm going to throw that one here on the end. But this is going to be a overview of the cars that are currently on the layout. This is not everything I have. This isn't all the ones that I've weathered, built, and put away already. So this is just the stuff that's out right now. There's a lot of neat cars and different projects and different weathering things I've done. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we take a deep dive into gondolas and tank cars. All right, so our first car here in our gondola train is actually a Walthers mainline car that I picked up, I want to say like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they did a run of these. And they were a pretty cheap car, but I did a little bit of upgrade work to it and a few minor changes to get it to come out a little bit better here. This is a G52M. One of the biggest problems I had with these Walthers cars, and Walthers in general when they make cars, is for some reason they always use this like wonky looking can opener. If you guys can see there, how it's all like kind of thin and wonky looking. That's what this one had looked like down here. I actually redid that decal with a micro scale decal so it would look better. And then other than the usual, I swapped the couplers out and swapped the wheels out for tangent semi-scale wheels. I also added separate grab irons to these. These come with molded on ones, but you can scrape them off and put separate grab irons on it. It really makes the car look a lot better. This one's got like some wire rolls in it for a load. It's a really nice car. It was a really easy project, just a couple little details, and it looks really great. So this is our first one here. All right, next up here we have a Tangent G43B. This is a car I actually built from one of the undecorated kits a few years back when I was, if any of you would watch the coiled steel train video that I did here 2 weeks ago. This is one of those gondolas I built in just a big heap of them. I think I did 12 or so at the same time, and this is one of them here. Went for kind of like a 70s, 80s, earlier Conrail repaint that's pretty rusted out and ratty looking with a lot of rust and all that fun jazz. So it's definitely a more dirty looking car. Camera's making it look a little bit darker than it really is. It's a bit of a brighter color than what it actually turned out. But this is the first of many G43s in our train here. We've got a handful here coming up next year. All right, next up here we have a G43A. This car, I believe, is from the 2021 run of G43s from Tangent, if that's my memory serves. This is the only one from that run I have weathered that's Conrail right now, I believe, but went for more of like a late 90s look on this where it's pretty rusted up. It's a little bit faded, and it's got a lot of just rust spots and all that cool stuff. It also has some of these what do you call them, like steel bar loads from State Tool and Die in it, just something different to have for a load on it. So these, the cool thing about these, if you'll pick up, they have rotating bearing caps on them. Pretty cool deal to have those. But this is the first of our G43As here. We got a couple more coming up. All right, here we have another G43A. This one is a Penn Central car. This is kind of, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, this was based off of a prototype photo I found. It's not the exact car number, but the weathering's all based off of a prototype photo I found. And this is again from the 2021 run of Tangent G43s. I really liked how this one turned out. I kind of liked how some of these ones they had where they painted over the Penn Central logo and put a wheel dot and a little lube plate on there instead. So that was kind of the inspiration. For some reason I saw a picture of that and I really thought it was neat, so I ended up building two. As you guys will see, there's one more after this, but just a really neat car. Another really pretty gnarly weathering job, but it's not really as crazy as it looks. I mean, it's faded and it's just got a bunch of rust paint work done to it, some powders over the top of it. So let's go ahead and check out the next one here. All right, and here we have yet another rusty Penn Central G43A. This one, if I'm remembering right, again, it was a similar deal as the last one where I think this is the car number of the car I bought, 576104. I don't think that's the actual prototype photo number, but this was just based off of a prototype photo I found of, again, where the Penn Central logo got painted over. It had a lube plate, and then this one had just a lot of rust around all the ribs and stuff that looked really cool. So went ahead and just kind of did this one off a photo again, just another neat one. I really like these Penn Central cars that made it to the end of Conrail, because they got like that really heavy fade going on with that Penn Central green, and then just the rust mixing with it. It just looks really cool, especially when you get patches and stuff and things like that going on with it too. All right, and here we have a G43A, I believe. This was the last of the cars from the 2021 Tangent run here. This one was from the factory with the Pennsylvania Railroad logo and the patch number on it. And I just weathered it up and kind of made it look like it's in the late 90s. Weathering's decent on it. I could do a little bit better nowadays, but for the time it was pretty good. I was happy with how it turned out, and kind of nice to have a Pennsylvania Railroad car in the gondola train, just because there's such a variety of these cars in service in the late 90s. So nice to have one running around right now. All right, now here we have a GE52 car. This was a kit bash I did with a Proto 1000, I want to say it is, drop-in gondola kit that I took and I cut the ends off, and I used like G43 ends from Tangent to make it look more correct. There's no actual model available of these cars, so I kind of had to kit bash it, and I had the grab irons and all. It's not perfect by any stretch, but it's a lot closer than just using the base car. So this one I went for, the classic late 80s repaint that's beat up and used up, because it's, 98, 99 in my era. And I have this really gnarly load here going on of some kind of scrap in there just to, spice it up a bit. So this is the first one of 3 of these here. We'll move on to the next 2. All right, here's our next of our GE52 cars here. This one's a kind of a late 90s, look like it's freshly repainted, not rebuilt obviously, but this is another one I kit bashed. And this one, as well as the one before and the next one here, they all have these styrene sides that I put dents in to kind of simulate a car that's been beaten up and all that. They're not perfect, but I think they look pretty dang good. So there's that one, and I'll just pull this ahead here and we'll catch the next one here. I always, whenever I'm doing these cars for the late 90s and I'm looking for something, I always like to have something that has the quality logo on it. I always like the look of those in the late 90s. I think they look neat, and that was kind of what made me pick these 2 specifically when I was decaling and putting them all together. But they were a pretty simple kit bash, a fun one to do, and overall I think they came out pretty good. All right, here we have our first G47 gondola here. I've got a couple of these here in this particular train. This one here is actually the most recent one I finished. It'll actually be in the next layout update video, because I just finished it up yesterday pretty much. This is one I've been working on for a while. It was a Rail Yard Models build. I can't remember who makes them now, but I got a few of the kits, and this is one of the ones I built here. Came out pretty dang good. Went for like a Penn Central patched one. I didn't have a prototype photo to go off of, so I just kind of winged it with the weathering. Just kind of went with my go-to tricks and techniques for something that was Penn Central in the 90s, and just, faded it up pretty good, and then weathered it up pretty good as far as all the rust goes. And then For the ends of this car, I decided to put the rebuild style ends on it. So the ends are actually freshly repainted, but the sides are all beat up. So kind of simulate a car that went in for maintenance and rebuild, and they didn't have enough time to work on it, and they needed it in service. So just something different to have running around. Just add a little spice to it. Instead of just doing the same thing over and over. All right, so this one here, this is another G47 I built. Obviously went for a late 90s repaint was what I was going for on this one. And unfortunately, as you guys can tell, we had a little funny business go on with the decals when I clear coated it. Hate when that happens, but I'll fix that eventually. Kind of one of those things that it bothers me, but it doesn't bother me enough to take the car off the layout and do it right now because I'm just happy to have it on the layout. This one in particular is a baled scrap load. I think it might be a Walthers load, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember. But just a cool one. And again, just kind of, um, going back and forth between fresh cars and, cars that are beat up and used up, and then cars that are kind of in between. That's kind of the trick with these gondola trains is just kind of float around a little bit in different eras of cars and paint jobs. All right, now here we have an Atlas gondola here. This is, Conrail got these cars in the late 90s, so they were pretty clean even at the end of Conrail here. So this particular car, I think all I did do was swap the couplers, and I think that's it, and just did some weathering to it. It's got a baled scrap load in it. I can't remember who I got that from. That might be Walthers, I'm not sure. But either way, just kind of a neat car. You could really tell the height difference between the G47 and these cars as well as the G43s. That's kind of one of the nice things about it's having that variety in the different heights of cars and the different looks of them all. But I have a few of these. This is the only one that's on the layout right now because there wasn't that many of them, but got to have one out to represent them. All right, and here we have yet another Tangent G43. I believe this one was a factory Penn Central paint when I got, gosh, 3 or 4 years ago. This was at a time that I was really big into the oil paints. As you guys can tell, this is all oil paint on the side of this car, and this is one that was when I was kind of learning how to do oil paints. I was really happy with how it turned out, and I still like it quite a bit. That's why it's still out on the layout right now. It's got a baled scrap load in it and just kind of looks cool. I like how it is, and it looks good mixed in with everything else here. I may come back eventually and add like a lube plate and some minor patch stuff to it, but for now I'm just leaving it be and enjoying it for what it is. All right, and what would my layout be without something that wasn't Conrail? We have a CSX gondola here. This is a Walthers mainline, the Railgun cars again. And this one, much like the first Walthers mainline car, the Conrail one, I shaved the molded on grab irons off and put separately applied ones. And then I just did a pretty light weathering to it because these cars were pretty in pretty good shape in the 90s. They weren't all beat up and used up, so I tried to leave it that way. And this one, I'm very happy with how it came out, and I just like having a little variety, so having a CSX car here and there just kind of mixed in, just I really like having that. So really cool car, a cheap car, and an easy build to do. All right, now we're getting into the last of the G47 cars here. This one again is like a 80s repaint is what I was going for with it. Just kind of that faded, darker colored freight car brown that Conrail used. And this one's just got, a bunch of little rust and some little patch spots here and there. It's also got the shredded scrap load in it that looks pretty cool. And it's got this little plate with the lube plate mounted on it, which you guys know I like all those weird cars with plates like that on there and stuff, and just things that make them different. So this one I finished, I want to say 2 months ago, and I'm really pleased with it. It's probably one of my favorite cars I have out right now. There's this one, and then there's actually two more here we're going to breeze through real quick. Here we have another kind of late 90s repaint here with the quality logo, of course. This is just kind of a simpler looking car, nothing too fancy going on, just kind of your plain Jane G47. And we got one more down here. This is going to be the last of our G47s here, again with the scrap load going on, and then obviously this one has the quality logo with the plate, and then the nut car numbers are actually mounted on a plate as well. So it's kind of the reason I picked that number is because of those plates and just having some variety and some difference here. All right, and here we have the last of our Tangent G43s that's on the layout here. This one is again from the big build I did a few years ago. Um, so like the decals aren't 100% perfect and all that fun jazz, but it was the best I could do with what I had at the time. And this one I think I did some oil paint work on, so that's what all the rust is oil paint on this one. That was back when I was in my oil painting phase, and this particular one, I remember this is a Walthers load. This is like a Walthers scrap load that you can get, and overall just a really neat car again, just something to mix in with trains and have some variety going on. And of course, how could it be the late 90s without a rusty, ratty looking railgun floating around? This again is another one of the Walthers cars. This one I added the grab irons to, of course. I actually did this one and the CSX one and the Conrail one all at the same time. This one has the scrap load in it, but just a rusty railgun. I mean, nothing too exciting there. It's you know, just kind of is what it is. I know somebody came out with a fancy pants version of these anymore that are really expensive, and you know, as much as I'd love to have one or two of them, they're more pricey than I want to spend. These Walthers cars serve me well enough for what I'm going for. They look appropriate. They're not fragile or anything you can mess up, and they're easy to upgrade too. So it's a really nice car to have here. All right, and last but certainly not least here with our gondola train is actually a ratty chassis system painted B&O gondola here. This is actually an Athearn ready to roll car, one of a couple that I have. But this one I just went for a late 90s look on these. By most of the part, by the late 90s, most of the lettering and all that was gone on these cars. They were just pretty much all rust, but I kind of wanted to have, you know, some of this still on here, so I went a little bit later with the weathering than what the photos would have called for, but I think it turned out good and it fits in well. Of course, I got to have something B&O on here in honor of my grandfather, you know, because he was big into the B&O. That was his railroad that he grew up rail fanning when he was younger. So, of course, it's kind of important to me to have something out that's B&O on the layout. So that's part of the reason this is out. So whenever I run a gondola train, it's got that in there for him. So that's going to do it for our gondolas. We'll move on to the quick and easy tank cars. There's only a handful of them. All right, so tank cars are something that I don't actually have very much of on the layout right now, and namely just they're not something I have much room for, I guess you'd say. This particular car, I believe, is an Atlas car that I upgraded to the Tangent semi-scale wheels and just did a light weathering job on it. It's labeled for corn syrup service, so it's generally hooked up to the next two cars, but overall, a really nice car. I'm just not really much of a tank car guy. I remembered seeing them when I was a kid, but not very much. So with tank cars, it's more or less just things I'm interested in and specific cars I remember from growing up. So let's move on to those here. All right, so the next two cars are actually, I believe they're Walthers cars. I think they're a funnel flow tank car, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't recall anymore. But about 3 or 4 years ago, when I was kind of getting back into the hobby more and I was getting a little more confident with painting and all that stuff, I had wanted to get these Staley corn syrup service cars, and I couldn't find any for sale anywhere, but I could find the decals. So I ended up getting these Walthers cars that are close enough for what I'm trying to do and painting them and decaling them myself. I very much remember these cars from growing up, and I remember them being, you know, this fresh repaint glossy look. And I remember them being like 10 cars at a time on a train at my local yard. I remember seeing them. So there's actually, I think I did 4 of them total. I got 2 on the layout right now, just kind of to have around, more or less just for the memories, if nothing else. They're not, you know, perfectly decaled, and they're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they fit the role of just kind of being the, just kind of like bringing back those memories and just kind of mixing them in with trains here and there to add some variety, because I don't have much for tank cars out. So that's these 2 Staley cars. All right, now we have 2 more Walthers funnel flow tank cars. These ones are actually labeled for molten sulfur, and these go in the category of Steve thinks it's cool, so Steve modeled them. I don't have any industries on the layout that'll do anything with molten sulfur, but I really liked these yellow cars, and I liked how like they had this rusty or orange top with the yellow on the sides. I just really liked how they looked, so I decided to pick up a couple here to have on the layout, and these are the only two that are weathered right now, is this first one, and then this one here is a pretty gnarly weathering job. I really liked how it turned out. Just really, really cool looking. Just a lot of, little rust spots dripping down and all that fun, cool stuff. So really, again, no real reason. I don't remember seeing them as a kid or anything, but just a car that I saw a prototype photo of that I said I want to model that. So that's how these two ended up here on the layout. All right, and last but not least for our tank cars here, this is actually the one that sits over at the paper mill because I don't have another car out to interchange with it yet. I still got to build one for it, but my memory serves, this is an Athearn Genesis car I got a really, really, really good deal on, and I ended up weathering a few years ago off a prototype photo where this whole center part's all rusty and the top's starting to turn orange with rust and stuff. It's far from perfect, but it was pretty good for what I was doing at the time because, everybody's got to start somewhere with weathering, and you got to learn and build your skills. So this one was one that once I finished it, I was really, really happy with. So that's going to do it for our gondolas and tank cars this week. Next week, I think we're going to tackle the covered hoppers because that's going to be a pretty hefty video. And then the last video will actually be all of our maintenance away cars, the gondolas, flat cars, ballast cars, and cabooses all put into one because I'd like to double up on that so that way I can get back to our regularly scheduled programming here. So as always, guys, I want to thank everybody for watching and tuning in for all this, and I appreciate all the comments, all the likes, all the kind words and everything, and until next time, have a good one.